This is my much wanted Monstera Burle Marx Flame. It's starting to get a lot bigger and is stalking, and today I'm going to show you how I put this gorgeous beauty onto a moss pole, and I'll show you all the little tips and tricks that I use when I'm putting up a plant like this onto a moss pole and putting it in a semi-hydroponics setup. Let's get started. Okay, in order for us to do this, we are going to need a plant, obviously. Here is my Monstera Burle Marx, and today I'm using something a little bit different. I'm using a pre-made moss pole. Now, some of you might know that I'm not a very big fan of pre-made moss poles. I prefer to make my own moss poles because that allows me to customize my pole to my plant. But I am using this one today because I want to see what it's all about. This is a pole that I was sent by the Leafy brand, and it's their special, really new 3.0 pole that you don't need Velcro plant tie to attach. And it's very, very easy to use. And it also allows you to propagate the plant, like when you're just chopping up the plant, you can just open up the tabs and take it out and you can reuse it. So I'm very, very hopeful. I'm really looking forward to seeing what this pole can do. And I am pairing this with this black planter. Now, I know a lot of you will know that I do love a white pot. I love white pots, but I'm using this black one today because I think it will look lovely and matchy-matchy with my black pole. This is also a pot set from the Leafy brand, so thank you to the Leafy brand. And if you're interested in getting anything from the Leafy brand, check out the discount code here and in the description below. So this is a two-set system. This is the clear inner pot, which is beautiful, and I have the outer pot, which doesn't have a hole, so that is going to be my cash pot. I love the inner pots because I don't necessarily have to go in and start making the ventilation holes like I do with my other pots. It does have these slits and on the sides that act as ventilation. So I've used these pots before, and it's worked fine without using the without putting additional ventilation holes. So that's what I'm going to do today. But I am also adding this. This is a microfiber wick that I like to use when I'm using my plants in a wick setup. So this pot, the inner pot, sits on top of the outer pot. And there's a little bit of a gap, about yay much at the bottom of it, so it can work as a self-watering planter. But if you don't want to put the wick in, you always just have to make sure that your nutrient solution is going above that dead zone, or maybe your roots will have grown into that, so you won't have that problem at all. But before my plant's roots grow into the reservoir, I'm going to use my wick. And this is a microfiber wick. I find that microfiber works really, really well, so much better than cotton. Now, if I can get it up there. So yeah, that is how I do that. And I am going to make a little knot in my wick, just so it doesn't fall out of the pot. See there. That is what that does, and that's what I was looking for it to do. So that is beautiful. Anywho, oh, I almost forgot the actual main ingredient for my moss pole. This is my sphagnum moss tree fern fiber combo. I love this because it allows my moss pole to stay moist a little bit longer. Sphagnum moss is notoriously difficult to rehydrate. Tree fern fiber isn't, and sphagnum moss returns that moisture a lot longer. So a combination of these two things for me is my dream substrate. Now, before we get going with making the moss pole, there is one thing we need to do that involves this and this. So we need to figure out, now looking at this here, so this is my pole here. It's got the longer section here, so I am assuming that this is the bottom part. I could be wrong. I don't know. If I am wrong, forgive me. Actually, I could be wrong. I don't know. Hang on. It's probably, I'm very notorious for not following instructions. I'm going to find the instructions so I can tell you what to do. So the Leafy brand have a lovely set of instructions over here. And yes, I was correct. This is the bottom part of the pole, and this is the top part of the pole. Now that we've got that sorted, I want to know how much of this moss pole is going to go in there. because that's going to determine where I start putting my sphagnum moss. That's point number one. So my pole is going to stand like that. So you might want to get, a little, texter or a marker or something just so you can mark that point. But I'm just going to count the holes, right? Because, so it's here, it stops here. So I can just count the holes. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So yeah, so at hole number 5 is where I want my moss to stop, because the reason that is important, I'll put this away, it's just in my way. Ugh. The reason that's important is because we want this section of the pole to have Leca or whatever substrate it is you're using. Now, there should be an inside and an outside. I'm assuming this is the outside because it looks lovely. It's got the logo on there. Let me take a look at the instructions. Is there any such thing? They haven't specified. So I'm just going to do whatever. So the first thing that you've got to do with this Leafy brand 3.0 pole is, if you've got a black one, this step actually doesn't apply. But if you've got a clear one, there's a clear piece of plastic or whatever it is just to protect that pole. You peel that off, and then the next thing that you do is bend over. There's some serrated, some lines there that are sort of pre-made. So you just sort of close them like that so that you can actually make the pole. So that's what that looks like. So when you're done, this is on a 90-degree plane like that, and we'll do the same on the other side. Okay, there we go. So that looks like that. And according to the instructions, which are over here, we are now at step number 2. So we're now meant to put our substrate onto our pole. So we know that this is the bottom part. So I'll get my substrate and I'll turn this around so you can see a little bit better. That's better. And this mixture here is moist, okay? So it is not dry, it is moist. Now I do need to remember that 1, 2, 3, 4, so there. So just about there is where I want that to stop. And you're not packing it, too densely. There, I think that will be okay for now. Right, let's see what step number 3 is. Step number 3 is gently bend the pole inward and lock the horizontal tabs one by one to close it. So and then it says that if it feels too loose, you can go back and add more moss. So one by one. So closing the tabs like so, right? So it's easy to do. I say easy to do. This tab actually still had the little plastic bit. It didn't come off from the manufacturing process. That's why it's taking a little bit longer. There we go. There we go. And I don't know, how do I feel about that? Oh, I might put a little bit more. I've got a sense of how, that feels. I think I might want to put a little bit more there just to thicken it up a little bit. Okay, now if you're just using sphagnum moss, this is probably not going to be as messy as mine because the tree fern fiber is quite flaky, so that goes everywhere. There we go. Well, this is definitely much easier than, putting the cable ties in, I have to admit. I mean, I say that, right? Oh, do you know what the problem is? Maybe before you start this process, look at the little holes there and make sure that all the little plastic tabs that have been, punched off are actually removed from the manufacturing process. So, I don't know if I'd like to complain about this, but that's truly nitpicking. There you go. So see what that looks like. That looks really, really nice. And I probably might want to put a bit more here. This one came out because I did not do it properly. Okay, so let's just get on with putting the tabs in. Ah! All right, I probably should not have worn this bracelet. That is so annoying. That's better. It's so much easier when I'm using this hand to just sort of hold it closed, and that allows the ones that I've put in to sort of stay. That is, yes, I think I've now got a rhythm. I now have a good rhythm. I say I have a good rhythm. Oh my goodness. Gosh. I think we all know that I am not the most handy person. Shucks. There we go. Okay, I am quite happy with the width of this. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so instead of, because it says that if it's a little bit on the thin side and you want to put more moss or more substrate in there, you can just open the tabs and, put more. But, I don't think I need to open them. I can just squish it like this. So making sure that it's not too compact, right? Just enough, just nice and light and airy. And all this can go back in there. And honestly, especially that top bit over there, it's easier to fill up when the pole is upright. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'll put a little bit more at the bottom, just a little bit more. Right, okay. Now I have my pole is all ready and it is all made up. So now we're going to go and do the next stage. So I'll put my pole there for 2 secs and focus on my plant. So this is my plant that's living in my naked root planter. And you will notice actually that this is a mismatched naked root planter. I've got the clear pot, the clear inner pot and a white outer pot. And when I take my plant out of that, voila, there is no algae in sight. Okay, so I'll take my plant out of that. And that is very, very easy to do. And I just gently pull out this one that is on here. Gently. And my superstar root here. I don't want to lose that one. So again, I'm not the most gentle person. Oh, got it. Well, it peeled off a bit, but there we go. Whoops, whoops, whoops. So that is the plant that we're working with. That is the root system of my plant. Looking amazing. Now we're just gonna keep this leca because we're gonna use it. There's no reason not to use that leca at all. Okay, this is my plant, and this is really, really important. Pay attention. So this is where my area roots are going to start, this direction. So I'm not putting the plant like this. I'm putting this side of the plant to be next to my moss. Now, this is where I want my plant to be, right? Because remember, this is the part that's going to be in the nursery pot. So I want my roots to be there. And then, come on now. There. That there is what we're looking for. Something like that. And so I will now get this tab and I will take that out and I will bring it to the top and I will put it over my plant and I will put it back in its little tab. There we go. And that, people, is my plant secure. It's so simple. That is it. Now I'm just going to put these tabs in there just so that it forms my pole at the bottom, right? So it's a nice solid structure. So it's good to close them, or at least that's what I believe anyway. Because this is going to stand up in my pot. Come on, baby. There we go. This is a little bit awkward because I'm using my left, I'm not left-handed. There we go. That was easy. That right there is what we're looking for. So now I'm going to pack this with Leca. I might just use my clean Leca only because this is clean Leca. Only because I can put it in my thing like that. So this is going to be like so. So it's going to be a little bit fiddly to start. So that's kind of what I do. But before I go any further, I've got my little pot, my nursery pot on standby because I'm going to need that very, very soon. Okay, so now I'll grab my nursery pot and do that, and then I'll stand it up. Some of the leca will fall out, but that's okay. That is okay because once we start to pack the pot, it's going to fill out all the spaces. We just wanted to create that space where you've got that initial leca layer. Okay, so now I'm just gonna fill that pot up with leca. Okay, so I'll keep filling this pot with leca, and that leca is going to go into those spaces. And I'll just use my hands to direct some of that. And I'll just, ooh, that was not a smart thing to do. You know why? Because I've now got a fair bit of that in my leca. So I'm just taking that out. Thankfully, they're not very big pieces. Shucks, that was not very smart. I did not think that through. Okay, I got most of it out. Whew. Okay. So there'll be no banging. I've got this acrylic stick that I'm going to use to direct the leca. So I'm just making sure, just using the stick to make sure that there's leca in those spaces. There we go, because the one thing we don't want is for our plant roots to be exposed to open air, to not have any leca around. So I'll use that stick again just to make sure that that leca is everywhere it needs to be. Make sure there's leca at the back as well. Because all that goes a very long way to making sure that that pole is as stable as it can be. Okay, that is what my plant now looks like on its new pole. I'm really, really happy with how that's turned out. Okay, so I now grab my cache pot and I'll put my plant in there. That looks fantastic. I really like how that is looking, and you can see that my plant is right there, right next to the moss. And yeah, this is very, very stable, and it will be really easy to just put another one on the top, and shucks, that'll be as stable as it can be. Right, so I'll just fill up my reservoir with my Clonix Clone and Root Zone solution, which is my special sauce. And that's only because I want to reactivate those roots, because I've mucked around with the plant. So I really want that root system to get going and to be stable in this leca. And then after that, I will go back to using foliage focus for my plant. Okay, so when I pick that up, ooh, lovely, lovely, lovely. So I'm going to put this plant in a bright, warm spot, and I just cannot wait to see the growth on this baby. And hopefully before too long, it's going to start looking as fabulous as a mature Monstera Burle Marx Flame. Now, I know you love a moss pole. I've got another video here that walks you through everything you need to know about moss poles. I'll see you there.